Hey everyone. Thank you so much for being here on Saturday afternoon. If you don't know me, my name is Cara. I'm teaching this course as part of my training to become an instructor in insight meditation. If you have questions about what insight meditation is, I'll leave plenty of time to answer those questions at the end. I want to take a moment to say explicitly that everyone who is here is welcome here. Spaces like this can be uncomfortable and intimidating for lots of reasons that have to do with who belongs in meditation and who belongs in spiritual practice and even who belongs in any given room. So I've done my best to be mindful of behaving in a way that lets you know that you're welcome, but I often misstep. So if I do something or say something that makes you feel like you don't belong or you're not included, I really hope that you'll tell me. So part of that is understanding that everybody here has a different body and different bodies are comfortable doing different things. There's nothing magical about the cross-legged position on the floor, and there's nothing magical about sitting on the floor. So if your body is happy in a chair, that's where it should be. And if you need any support, however your body is shaped, it's good to, grab one of these pillows or other things that are around to see if you can find a way to feel like you're really supported. One way to do that is to make sure that your hips are higher than your knees. When your hips are equal to or lower than your knees, you have to strain your back to hold your body up. So it's good to find a way to let your hips be lower than your knees so that support is coming at you. Right? However, that's not a rule. If knees higher than hips feels good to you, that's what you should be doing. So we've met in this class a couple of times, and we've talked about two things. One is watching the breath. And when I say watching the breath, I mean sitting and attending to the normal, natural breath as it arises. So in some practices, you change the breath or control the breath. In this practice, you just see what your breath is doing, with the understanding that as soon as we attend to the breath, it usually changes. So if you can't get your breath to be normal and natural, don't panic. Changing is normal and natural. So to begin the practice, what we usually do is just settle in and start to watch the breath coming in and out of the body. And that can be hard to do. So you may want to focus on one aspect of the breath. Cool air coming in over the top lip, maybe the chest expanding, or the feeling of contraction as the air goes out, or maybe the feeling of air rushing out your nose. And for some people, it's useful to try to stay focused on all four parts: in, expand, contract, release. So play around with that for a couple of seconds and see what feels good when you're watching. If I could just see a show of hands, during that short practice, who remained entirely focused on the breath and didn't think about or notice anything else? Yeah. So that's the other part, right? Insight meditation is focused on becoming aware of what's happening in real time. And a great way to know what that is that moment when you recognize that you've become distracted from your practice of watching the breath. That's the moment we call mindfulness. The moment you notice you have become distracted from the task of watching the breath. And so what we've been trying to do is, first of all, be aware, oh, I'm not doing the breath anymore. And then to give a simple, gentle label to the thing that took you away from that practice. So maybe it was sound, or maybe it was pain, or maybe it was emotion, or maybe it was thoughts. And so the practice for us is to simply name and gently name what that is. Thinking, and then return to the practice of the breath. Right? So we give it a name, release it, and then come back to that. Because the distraction is inevitable. We expect to be distracted thousands of times. And each time, the reason we call this a practice is we practice noticing what that was, and then return to what we were doing. So let's try that together for a little bit. Go back to watching one part or all four parts of the breath. And when inevitably something pulls your attention from that, give it a name, let it go, and return to the breath. Hearing. Planning. Anger. You may notice 1,000 instances of distraction, and that's the practice. always begin again. The Buddhist holy texts, some of them are called the sutras. There's a sutra known as the Arrow Sutra. The Buddha's talking to a bunch of guys like he does, teaching them about Buddhist stuff. And he says, a man being shot with an arrow, what would he do? And the monks or acolytes are like, oh, well, he should tend to that arrow, right? See what he can do to feel better, get better. And the Buddha says, yes, I agree, that makes sense. So why, being shot by an arrow, do you insist on shooting yourself with a second arrow? This is a really big idea in Buddhism, the second arrow. And I bring it up not only because I think it's incredibly useful, but also because sometimes we, in meditation, especially secular meditation, we pretend that these ideas came out of like American neuroscience, but they didn't. They're ancient ideas that have been transmitted by specific people over time. And I think it's good to be respectful of the stories that accompany the ideas. So when we practice, in addition to noting what is here, we also begin to practice discerning the first arrow, hearing, planning, thinking, pain, from the second arrow. The second arrow is our mental reaction to what we observe. So maybe I experience sound, but then I also experience the sound should not be happening. We were talking about when you're on retreat sometimes and somebody next to you is coughing and you're like, what is with this coughing person? Why are they like this? Or you might also experience pain, and then the thought that comes with it is, this pain will be here forever. Or you might experience thoughts. You're thinking about what you're going to do after this class, and then the thought that accompanies it is, I'm supposed to be meditating, not thinking, what is wrong with me? Why can't I focus? Right? And these two things come so close together that they kind of feel like one thing. The thing and the reaction to thing. So when we practice mental noting, our task is to discern what is actually here from our mental reaction to what happens. The first arrow from the second arrow. And I wonder, as you were sitting here, if you're comfortable sharing, please do. Did you notice any second arrows, mental reactions to things that you noticed?
Well, I had like this weird like parking anxiety, so I just was like, parking. And then my thought was like, you don't have to worry about your car right now. so it's like, why am I thinking about like car?
Yeah.
So that was like the second arrow was like, why am I even thinking about this?
Exactly. So you had worry, and then you had judgment of worry. Thank you. That's a really good example. Anyone else have one like that? Yeah.
So I was doing some mental That was good.
And then like when I caught myself, I was like, whoops.
I like whoops. Whoops is a fairly like gentle response to mental shopping. Yeah,
Yes.
whoops. I'm not here to shop. Anyone else have something like that?
Yeah. My second arrow, I guess, was just like thinking about just like what was coming up and being like, man, it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take a minute. So yeah, just trying to let go of like judgment about like I don't know the time that it's gonna take to let go. So yeah.
So you actually had a series, right? So something came up that was painful.
Yeah.
And then the thought was, oh, this is going to take forever to get rid of.
Yeah.
And in the middle was, I need to get rid of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm feeling that too. I have some pain in my back today, and I keep thinking, oh, this is pain. This shouldn't be here. I need to, and then a series of things I need to do about it.
I feel you. Me too. Back pain too.
Yeah. And as I'm saying this to you, I'm realizing the strong sense of responsibility I feel for the pain.
Yeah.
That I feel today. Like, what am I going to do about this?
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good kind of segue into what I wanted to talk about today. Because we have this breathing practice, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, in, out, in, out. And we have the mental noting practice, which is the naming. And today I wanted to talk about another skill that we practice when we practice insight meditation, which for me is where we sort of ramp up the difficulty, right? And that is to allow what is happening. So to notice what is actually here. This is pain, this is judgment, this is thinking. It takes courage to notice what is actually here, because very often what is actually here hurts. In Buddhism, you may have heard that there are 4 noble truths, and the first noble truth is there is pain in this life. It's important in Buddhist philosophy to accept that life is going to include pain. That's part of it. Sometimes this is translated, the first noble truth, as things are not as we would have them be. And the Buddha said, pain is inevitable. Suffering you can work with. For the Buddha, the first arrow was pain, and the second arrow was suffering. Suffering is the idea that comes with the pain, and that's where there's a little bit of freedom. So the way that we work with the second arrow, counterintuitively, is by allowing it. The second arrow resists or adds to what we have noticed is true. And you may have heard Carl Jung said, what we resist persists. And you may have had this experience yourself. The more you try to make a thought or feeling more not true, the more true it becomes. So the second arrow resists what is true. But if we can get in the habit of allowing, we can give some freedom around the resistance and give some freedom around the suffering. It's hard though, because that's not what we're in the habit of doing. So what would this look like in practice? When sound arises, like the trolley sounds, or the yelling, joyful people sounds, or the door slamming sounds, we think then sound is allowed. When we go shopping in our heads, right? That's allowed. Shopping is allowed. Judgment is allowed. Worry is allowed. We're just playing with the idea. We're running an experiment where anything that happens is allowed. Even my back pain is allowed. And even as I'm saying this and I believe it, I can feel the resistance in my body because the idea is so countercultural. We believe, and by we I'm sort of making a blanket statement about American people, we believe in the power of individual minds to control outcomes. That is central to our culture, right? That what you do in your mind has massive results, not just for your own life, but for the world outside you. And if you believe that your mind is that powerful, then allowing things seems dangerous and irresponsible, right? How could I allow that? How could I allow pain? How could I allow suffering? So to kind of clarify what we're talking about when we talk about allow in this context, I want to talk about what allow isn't. A big criticism of Buddhism is that it's passive, right? If I allow, then I accept. I'm just shrugging in the face of injustice or pain. And I'm shirking my responsibility to create change. James Baldwin, the great activist and thinker, said, "Not everything can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced." And central to the practice of Alcoholics Anonymous, you might be familiar with the serenity prayer, right? There was the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Lots of great traditions tell us that if we want to make change, there is wisdom, maybe sad wisdom, in knowing the difference between what we can change and what we can't, and knowing how change occurs and how it doesn't. But in a culture where individual minds have so much power, it's almost as though if we admit something is true, we're unleashing it into the world. We're creating a value judgment. And sometimes we think allow means permit, right? If I let this thing exist in my mind, I'm also letting it exist in the world. And that's up to me. If I let pain if I allow pain in my body, then I'm allowing the existence of pain in the world. When the truth is, pain will exist in the world whether you allow it or not. The question is, what relationship will you have to it? When I was a weird, lonely, scraggly, gothy sort of teenager, I got really excited in the idea that I could go to the occult section in the library and learn some spells and get some control over my miserable teenage life, right? I wanted to learn how to control things with magic. And another weirdo teenager that I hung around told me, "Oh, you know what they do? You know what the government does? They make these fake books of magic and they put them in the store so that when you read them and you try the spells and they don't work, you'll think magic isn't real." Which I thought was like an amazing conspiracy theory. I'm not sure I believe it, but I do think it's a really good tactic, right? If I were an all-powerful government, I would definitely use that tactic. And when I think about it now, I kind of think that does happen in our society. Like, how many books are on our shelves that say, you can use the power of your mind to control reality. If you think positive thoughts, you're going to have a positive life. You can manifest things. I'm not very well versed in the science, but my vague sense of it is that your attitude, whatever you create with your mind, you can also create in the world. And that happens in business, it happens in psychology, it happens in justice work. But just like my friend said, when you try to do the magic spell and you don't do it, you're like, oh, magic doesn't exist. I personally have had the experience of trying to control, oh, making me sad to remember, of trying to control the world with my heart and mind, trying to change people and systems with my heart and mind, and failing, and then thinking change doesn't exist. It's kind of the same scam. When I can't control the world with my mind, I become discouraged. I fall into despair, and I think I'm broken. Why can't I change the people I love? Why can't I change the systems I hate? Why isn't my mind powerful enough? What's wrong with me? Maybe I don't have enough power. Maybe I don't have enough juice. Maybe I don't have enough belief. And what I love about the time that I've spent with this practice is that observing and observing and observing my mind has taught me that the truth is I don't have the power to change things by wanting or not wanting them. Whether I want them or not, they're true. Unhoused people are not unhoused because I didn't put my mind to it. Gaza is not under siege because I took a nap and looked at Instagram for a few hours. My sister is not addicted because I let that happen by not trying hard enough to change her. I am, in fact, in terms of what I can do with my mind, painfully out of control of these things. The first arrow is that unjust systems, power structures, and trauma exist. The second arrow is my sense of individual and mental responsibility for these things. And that sense of responsibility uses my energy, turns me against myself, and it leads to despair. And just like with the magic books, it leaves me ineffective. The message in the second arrow is not passive. It demands the courage to see clearly. It demands the courage to see things as they are, just like Baldwin did, and just like the many people who have come through recovery programs do. Not everything can be changed, but nothing can be changed till it's faced. The wisdom to know the difference. And to do this courageous thing takes mundane practice. There's a dailiness to it. And that's what we're here to practice. Discerning the thing that is from the mental reaction to it, and allowing the thing that is to be the thing it is. So when sound arises, we call it sound. And when dislike of that sound arises, we similarly call it dislike. When thinking happens, we call it thinking. And when we wish we weren't thinking, we call it judgment. That's what it is. And then we return to the breath. Again and again and again, because this is practice. That's what we're practicing. So let's try that out. Check in on your body. Does it want more support? Would you like to be maybe laying down or sitting in a chair? Or because we're doing all this hard work. Let's make sure the body is super supported to do it. Settling back into the body. Noticing where a pillow or a blanket or a movement might help make you feel really supported. And then beginning to watch the normal, natural breath come in and out. And normal is whatever is happening to you right now. Maybe focusing on that air coming in, chest expanding. Maybe you're holding your attention at the air going out.
Hey, you know what? Wow. I remember all that today. All that 50 seconds. You too.
It's only a matter of time before I notice I am not watching the breath. I notice what I am up to, and I label it. Again and again, I realize that I'm not watching the breath. I note what I am doing. And I just allow that. I'm noticing boredom or resistance, wishing I was doing something else. All of that is allowed. Maybe I notice a sense of peace or freedom or ease. That is also allowed. Being mindful of your pain. Pain is allowed. But not required. If a gentle shift of the body allows you some ease, try it. And then notice what comes up. Is it ease? Is it further frustration? Is it guilt? Or judgment? The only thing you have to do is notice. That's all that's required here. And at this point of the meditation, you might be longing for it to be over, wondering when it can stop, wondering if you can do one more second. All of this is allowed. Insight meditation isn't a discipline. We're not trying to mold ourselves into something or train ourselves into something. It's a practice. And like any practice, sports practice, theater practice, dance practice, there's some experimentation in it. We're seeing what happens when we try this. And when we practice allowing, we're practicing, for most of us, something that is not very familiar and not very comfortable, and seeing what we see. My psychology hero, Carl Rogers, is famous for saying, the curious paradox is, when I accept myself exactly as I am, that's when I change. And that's been my experience of this practice as well. As soon as I'm able to stop trying to change myself, that's when I notice change unfolding naturally. Not necessarily today. Today you might just feel kind of like sore and weird. But over time, with practice, a different kind of change unfolds from allowing than from restricting or compressing or putting rules.